The car isn't beautiful, nor will it impress with its performance, but it impresses with its mechanical solidity and simple design. While it resembles the much more popular Nissan Qashqai in many respects, unlike its rival, it's practically a steal. The Suzuki SX4 S-Cross debuted in 2013. Despite the similarity in name, it is not a direct successor to the SX4, although it essentially serves the same function as a larger compact crossover as its predecessor. The S-Cross's dimensions perfectly match those of competitors like the Nissan Qashqai and Mitsubishi ASX. The resemblance, especially to the first-generation pre-facelift Qashqai, is uncanny, as if Suzuki was inspired by this model. Even the dimensions differ only slightly. Nevertheless, it's a fully original Suzuki design, based on a platform not used in any other model, though structurally similar to the Vitara. The car debuted on the market with two engines, petrol and 1.6-liter diesel, with two gearboxes, manual and automatic, and two drive types, 2WD and 4WD. In 2016, the car underwent a controversial facelift. The front end, in particular, was somewhat of a problem for those with a keen eye for aesthetics, but over time, customers became accustomed to the bulging headlights and American grille. At the same time, the existing engines were discontinued and replaced with a range of turbocharged petrol engines. The same was done with the transmissions. A new 6-speed with a torque converter was introduced. The 4WD version remained on the market. In 2021, Suzuki announced the introduction of its successor, and in November, it unveiled a car strikingly similar to the one it had been offering for years. The name was changed to S-Cross, but only in price lists and catalogs, and the car's appearance was significantly modified, but fundamentally, the body shape, interior layout, and dimensions remained unchanged. This means we're dealing with a significant facelift, but not a new model, as the design remains the same. However, there are so many changes that this car deserves a separate review. What kind of car is it, and who is it for? Considering its size, 4.3 meters long and 2.6 meters wheelbase, the Suzuki SX4 S-Cross is a typical compact family crossover. It doesn't stand out from its competitors in any way. It has a well-organized, well-designed interior, a fairly spacious 430-liter trunk, a spacious interior, and a relatively generous equipment list. The downsides include hard plastics, competitors have nicer ones, and mediocre cabin sound insulation. As for the ride itself, the handling is decent. The suspension design is classic, with McPherson struts and a torsion beam. Depending on tire size, the car feels more or less pliant. Earlier generation gasoline engines aren't particularly dynamic, but they can be fuel efficient. Newer turbocharged engines offer better performance. In my opinion, the Suzuki SX4 S-Cross is a good option for a family needing a 4-seater or 2+3. It's a great car for both city driving and highway driving, and with 4-wheel drive, it offers excellent traction on slippery surfaces. It's not an off-roader in the slightest. What engines were installed? At launch, only two engines were offered, a 1.6 VVTi petrol and a 1.6 DDIS diesel. Both produced 120 horsepower, with the diesel boasting significantly more torque. However, the petrol engine's characteristics allowed for faster acceleration from a standing start, while the diesel was slightly more agile. Both engines were paired with all-grip 4-wheel drive and an automatic transmission. The diesel with an automatic was not offered in Poland. Front-wheel drive cars had only manual transmissions. The petrol engine was offered with a 5-speed or continuously variable transmission, while the diesel engine was offered with a 6-speed or dual-clutch transmission, also with 6 gears. This is because the 1.6 DDIS engine is a Fiat design known as the multi-jet, so the transmission is the same as that used in Italian cars. In 2016, the engine lineup underwent a complete overhaul. The base engine was the 1.0 booster jet petrol engine with 111 horsepower, while the more powerful 1.4 booster jet initially produced 140 horsepower and, from 2020, 129 horsepower. This was achieved by modernizing the engine, lowering its top-end torque while increasing its maximum by 15 Nm using the ISG mild hybrid system. The 1.0 booster jet engine could be optionally equipped with a classic 6-speed automatic transmission, but it was not available with 4-wheel drive. A 5-speed manual gearbox was standard. Until 2020, the more powerful automatic engine was only available with 4-wheel drive and also featured a classic transmission. From 2020, the automatic was no longer offered, and the 1.0 booster jet engine was discontinued. 4-wheel drive remained an option. Which engine to choose? Virtually every engine in the Suzuki SX4 S-Cross performs well, although the diesel engine occasionally experiences problems when paired with the automatic transmission. It's the riskiest and most expensive option to maintain. The Fiat unit is highly refined and boasts a low failure rate compared to similar designs. However, it doesn't consume nearly as much fuel, 5.3 liters 100 kilometers, to risk a costly breakdown. Additionally, it's important to remember to regularly replace the timing belt every 100,000 kilometers or 5 years. A much better choice is a petrol engine, and virtually any one of them. The simple 1.6 VVT engine has indirect injection and no major technical complications, and users praise it for its complete reliability. Absolutely basic servicing is sufficient. The timing chain is used. If you plan to use an LPG system, it's a good idea to have the valve clearance adjusted every 60,000 kilometers. Unfortunately, this is a rather expensive procedure, up to €800, because it's done with shims, but the cost-benefit ratio of using LPG will be significantly higher. Ultimately, an LPG-powered car will be cheaper to run over longer distances than a diesel, although driving a diesel is slightly more enjoyable, especially compared to versions with automatic transmissions. After the facelift, we have only petrol engines to choose from, and both present no problems, despite the use of direct injection. The 1.0 booster jet is slightly more fuel efficient than the naturally aspirated 1.6, provided you're willing to drive at low revs. Auto Center users report that the 1.0 engine averages 6.2 liters per 100 kilometers, while the 1.6 requires 6.4 liters per 100 kilometers. By contrast, the 1.4 booster jet uses 6.9 liters per 100 kilometers in the 140 horsepower version and 6.6 liters per 100 kilometers in the 129 horsepower version. Among the newest gasoline engines, the best and most enjoyable is the 140 horsepower engine. It's the most dynamic, and its 220 Nm of torque brings it closer to a diesel. It's worth noting, however, that users have no complaints about the dynamics of the 1.0-liter 3-cylinder engine. For many, it's a positive surprise. The 1.4 booster jet engine proved somewhat disappointing after the 2020 revisions and the addition of a mild hybrid drivetrain. Performance dropped slightly, and the driver doesn't perceive any benefits from the fuel-efficient solution. It's worth noting that while reports indicate lower fuel consumption for this engine, it wasn't offered with an automatic transmission, so the average figure is more favorable. There are currently no issues with the mild hybrid system, but these are potential weaknesses of the drivetrain, which previously lacked them, including the additional battery. Apart from the model year, there's nothing to recommend choosing the 129 horsepower version. In summary, the diesel engine, while very good in its own right, is mediocre compared to other engines, and there's no reason to choose it. The 1.6 engine is the least problematic and potentially the cheapest to repair, and the booster jet units are very good, although they can develop some problems after 200,000 to 250,000 kilometers. Is it worth choosing automatic and 4-wheel drive? 4-wheel drive is certainly an added benefit, and the simple design with an electromagnetically controlled clutch engaging the rear axle hasn't shown any problems so far. However, it's not mandatory, and choosing the 2WD version is a no-brainer. When it comes to gearboxes, the best are the 6-speed Aisin automatics with booster jet engines. Choosing a Fiat dual-clutch transmission with a diesel carries the greatest risk. The Jatco continuously variable transmission is slightly safer because it's not subjected to excessive stress. Repairs can be cheaper than dual-clutch systems. Typical faults. The Suzuki SX4 S-Cross is one of the least problematic cars on the market, and in fact, models serviced at authorized service centers practically do not break down. The only frequently reported user issue is the power steering, although many claim they have a problem but can't describe it. Some find the steering excessively stiff, others claim they need to make numerous corrections at higher speeds, and still others claim the steering wheel doesn't return to its starting position after a turn. I've personally driven 6 SX4 S-Cross models from various production periods and with various engine variants, and none of the above issues caught my attention. These may be isolated incidents or perhaps the subjective impressions of those who simply don't like the car. Another problem, albeit very rare, is the failure of dual-clutch transmissions, which were not normally offered in Poland, so this affects imported cars, and only a few of them. Replacing the clutches alone costs around €5,000, which somewhat negates the economic value of purchasing this variant. Diesels alone account for a mere 12% of the Polish market, of which only 1% are automatic versions. Therefore, the incidence of minor faults, mainly transmission software, is small. Other user complaints stem more from poor interior assembly quality than mechanical faults. There are some creaks, squeaks, or loose parts, but overall, the car simply doesn't break down. You might also have reservations about early multimedia systems, as they don't look or function modern. Operating costs. The cost of maintaining this car is extremely low, and authorized service is moderately expensive, but visits are infrequent, usually only during periodic inspections. Consumables and parts are reasonably priced for this class of car, and there's no shortage of replacements on the market. The SX4 S-Cross isn't a particularly popular car, but it's worth noting that the engine designs are similar to other Suzuki models. Some chassis parts are interchangeable with the Suzuki Vitara. Only the diesel is equipped with a dual-mass flywheel. The diesel has a relatively straightforward DPF exhaust gas aftertreatment system, while the booster jet petrol engines don't use a GPF system. The standard and optimal tire size for this car is the 205/60ths R16, available in the mid-range segment for around €350 each. An optional size is the 205/50ths R17, also priced at around €400 for a mid-range tire. A 215/55ths R17 was also available, but these tires are several dozen euros more expensive. Oil requirements are not high. A 1-liter engine uses 2.9 liters per change, which reduces service costs. A 1.4-liter engine requires a slightly larger change, 3.3 liters. A 1.6-liter gasoline engine requires more oil, 3.9 liters. A diesel engine, on the other hand, requires 5.6 liters per change. The 6-speed automatic transmission requires 4 liters of oil, while the manual requires 2.5 liters for the 1.0 and 1.6 variants and 2.8 liters for the 1.4 variant. The diesel manual transmission requires 2.1 liters of oil during a change. I don't have information on changing the oil in the CVT or dual-clutch automatic transmission. In cars with all-grip drive, remember to change the oil in the bevel gear, approx 0.9 liters, and rear differential, 0.75 liters. Both mechanisms use the same oil. The multi-plate clutch is maintenance-free.